We still have some folks who will be coming in, so you'll see that we have a staffer who is admitting folks into the session today. But again, this is Margaret Gustafson from the Office of Early Childhood. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this really neat pilot that we're doing around incentives. You can put questions in the chat. We're going to hold the questions until the end so that you can hear all of the information. I'm sure we're going to cover a lot that will include answers to questions that you probably have. I know many of you have already been reading the frequently asked questions, and we sent out the link for that on the OEC website. So thank you for taking the time to read the FAQs. And I think we will get started now. You'll see that the recording has begun. So thank you again for joining us. We're going to take a walk through qualified workforce incentives, the pilot. We're going to talk about how it started, where we got some of our data. We're going to walk through what an application looks like, and we're going to talk about the ways that administrators can help their teaching staff and how teaching staff can help themselves as we go. So let's get started. As I mentioned, in the email out to all of the OEC funded licensed programs, we talked about the page on the OEC website. This is just reminding you that the bulk of information and answers to questions that you have is going to be found here. So you're going to go under provider resources, and it's under program improvements and supports, qualified workforce incentives. What are the qualified workforce incentive goals? So the very first one, obviously, is to begin incentivizing folks in a monetary way to meet early childhood education standards. Right? We have long talked about this, so many of you sent very excited emails about, we're so glad this is finally happening. And I want to make sure that we call out specifically, this is not stabilization funding. Okay, I know that we're still very much in a stabilization mindset, but this has been in the making for a long time, and this is really around incentivizing our teaching staff at this point. You'll see us talk about some other things about how we're looking at this pilot down the road, but you can see the incentivizing is the very, very top goal after many years. The second piece is making sure that folks are connected to OEC scholarship assistance. Right, so as we're asking staff to join this field, you can come in without a degree, but we want you to get the credentials to be able to be an early childhood professional. We have scholarship assistance for that. We don't want folks taking on student loans. We have been very fortunate that the Scholarship Assistance Fund has been able to cover all of these costs for fees, for books, for credits. We have not had a cap on the use of the Scholarship Assistance Fund recently, so it's a lovely thing. We want to make sure folks are connected to that. The third is the use of the OEC registry. So we say to folks, it's like anything. The more you use it, the more comfortable you get with it. And we are using it a lot lately. So you know, if you are a Care for Kids receiving program, that we're using it for looking at Care for Kids compliance. If you have folks who are using scholarship, they're definitely in there all the time. As an OEC funded program, you are required to use the registry. So hopefully this makes it a little bit more enjoyable of a requirement when you know that there is some money coming to your staff for this. And the last is to look at this in a really long-term way. As I said, this is the pilot. This is our beginning. All right, we have visions of where we want to take this for a wider assortment of roles and settings, but we need to begin to look at how we can support compensation in the field. And you know that that's a theme all the way through from stabilization to this point. So let's take a look at some details. Folks have been really impressed to know that we have $2.15 million out of preschool development grant funding. So please remember, as preschool development grant funding, there are certain parameters that we have to meet. This is part of our PDG plan. So folks have been very quick to ask, how about this? How about that? Where are we going next? It's a very planful way to introduce this, and we're starting with this pilot. We wanted to make sure that as much money ended up in the pockets of the teaching staff. You know that that is a common theme of commissioner buys. We want to make sure that there is less money stuck in building things and infrastructure, and as much as possible is getting out to our frontline workers. So the registry budget covered all of the build out costs for this to have the application run through the registry. And the funding is covering the vendor fees for payments. So if you're familiar with some online banking and transactions, there's sometimes a fee attached. We're making sure that the amount awarded is exactly as we market it, that the fee actually comes out of other funds and that the individual gets that full amount. That said, the awards are taxable. So we say multiple times that we encourage folks to make sure they put an aside for paying those taxes. Enrolling applications. So I know folks were scrambling to immediately get things in. Take a breath, take a moment, right? We're going to start, we're going to be really planful with this. We are not rushing, but we want to get the money out to the teaching staff. So it's a rolling application. And I already talked about the FAQs, but for those of you who just joined us, please make sure that you go to the Qualified Workforce Incentives webpage on the OEC website and check those out. For those who came a little bit late, you can put questions in the chat. We're going to hold all questions till the end, and we have OEC staff that are looking to see things that are not covered during the webinar for us to address. All right, so let's jump right into eligibility. In the pilot, we're starting with teaching staff in licensed centers and group homes who have confirmed employment at the program for 6 months or more. So you'll recognize that as a piece of really looking to that commitment and looking initially at only the teaching staff in our OEC funded school readiness, child daycare contract, and state Head Start programs. Why did we start with you all? Because you all have been using the registry for much longer. You know, by virtue of that requirement that you are in the registry, that you're updating it monthly, that all of your staff have to be up to date. Very, very important for us to be able to have a population that we could go to the governor's office and to OPM with and say, here are our estimates based on this population, which we feel is fairly complete. So really important for all of your hard work, making sure that the registry is up to date. You'll see we talk about that a little bit more detail in a minute. Right? It's also a very key population for OEC. We want to make sure that we are promoting our OEC funded programs because we support the low-income families and the communities around them. This is a key initiative for the Office of Early Childhood. So speaking of that data, here's a little point for you all. This is why it's so important when you all look at your staff confirmation pages.
Wait a second.
Right, so when you go in monthly and you're looking at your staff confirmation page, and for this I'm speaking to the folks with admin access to the registry who are on the webinar. I know we have a mix. We've got some folks who are teaching staff here, and we have program administrators. So I'll try to be mindful of the different populations. Those of you with administrative access who are responsible for ensuring the details of the program are correct. This is where we find your data. As we were looking at starting off these incentives, you can see the obvious differences for us and why we're starting with the licensed programs and the teaching staff. All right, again, partly because of the PDG parameters, but also we have really concrete evidence of where we want to be able to incentivize. I'm going to do a shout out to those of you who really pay attention to that staff confirmation page. We are still taking off people who claim they make $1 an hour and people who make $1 million a year. I would love to join you there. We can't use your data, and that's really sad. So we're going to be contacting programs again to go in and clean that out. You are required to make sure that those are up to date, and it really makes a big difference for us when we're running the data. All right, so this pilot, the essential qualifiers. The first piece of the base incentive is based on the employment status, and I'll talk about that in just a second in more detail. The second piece is capacity building for Care for Kids. You know from Commissioner Bai that this is a very, very important project for the OEC. And we want to make sure that as many providers meet that one-time orientation as possible. So regardless of whether or not your program currently accepts Care for Kids, you have access to everything you need, your staff need, in order to meet that one-time health and safety orientation. So we're looking for that to be completed. And then finally, oh, and I see a typo, sorry, 1, 2, and 3 education benchmark. They have to meet one of the early childhood education benchmarks, a current CDA credential issued by the Council for Professional Recognition. And then the rest are the degrees or the ECTCs, specifically in early childhood education. All right, so when your staff are looking or you're looking to see, what's been coded to my account or to my teaching staff account, the education and training report shows how we have coded those degrees. And you can see if we've coded it as early childhood education, meeting our common standard for assessing, or if we've labeled it as elementary education or non-ECE. This pilot is specifically starting with these benchmarks. Okay, so some of the questions that have come in already have been around, but I have a master's degree in elementary education, or I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Can't this count? Nope, we're looking specifically in this pilot. We're starting with the national standard, the ECE component. So let's get into the details a little bit. You will recognize, some of you will, that this is mirroring some of our definitions for other initiatives. So when we look at employment status, we're looking at full-time as defined as 30 hours or more a week and 40 weeks or more a year. All right, so you have to have both of those components to be considered full-time, full year. Anything less than that, you'll see gets 50% of the base award and 50% of bonuses. The inclusion of Care for Kids one-time health and safety orientation. As I said, we're looking at building that capacity. You can find information about Care for Kids, obviously, on the Care for Kids website. We also have in the registry updates section a piece about free online training where you can see how you can access the 5-hour and 18-hour online options and the full detail about each of those. Remember, when you're using the 5-hour Care for Kids online health and safety orientation training, that it accompanies your OEC licensing approved first aid, CPR, and MedAdmin certifications. So 2 different options to meet there. And again, everyone has access to the online training. It's a free unlimited subscription through your registry account. And I mentioned that we're verifying the degrees using our common standard as we have since 2010. The bonuses, and in a minute you'll get to see the numbers. Some of you have already gone right to the website and you're zooming through those to be able to see the numbers. But just some really important pieces to talk about with each of these add-on bonuses. It's 10% of each of the base amounts. So if you're directly working with infants or toddlers, again, these will be very familiar to you from hearing Commissioner Bai speak since the beginning of her appointment as commissioner, really addressing the shortage of infant and toddler teaching staff. So we want to incentivize that. We're obviously looking at our quality initiatives. So Head Start approved or NAOIC accredited programs. If a staffer works in a program that has one of those, they also receive a bonus. And then the Social Vulnerability Index, you got to know that during stabilization funding. That is a bit of our equity work. And so any program that has an SVI of 0.6 or higher has that bonus. No one has to worry about number 2 and 3. Those are automatically loaded into the registry. So no worries there. We have pulled that all and it autofills, as you'll see in a minute, into applications. All right, so here's the detail. And I know it's a lot for a page. Remember that it is on the FAQ page for the OEC website. The top portion is for full-time and full year. And as I said, the less than full-time full year has 50% of the base and then still a 10% bonus for each of the applicable bonuses. You can see that the high end for the award would be $2,600. And we're seeing that there are quite a few of those already in. We have, I think, almost 220 applications in as of about half an hour ago. We've started approving them and moving them on for payment. And so far, we have seen quite a few at the $2,600 range, partly because obviously our OEC funded programs are required to achieve and maintain NAOIC accreditation or be Head Start approved. So that bonus is calculating in. And we have a lot of folks who are at the bachelor's degree level in general anyway. All right, so what can everybody do to get ready? We really want to emphasize, again, it's a rolling application. So there is no rush to have OEC funded program staff going in and clicking submit before they're sure that everything is in and everything is up to date. If you are an admin access user or a multi-site MSA access user, you want to make sure that you're meeting the general policy A03. You're going into the registry, you're doing the updates monthly. And when you do that staff confirmation page, you want to really pay a lot of attention to detail. We've had several people reach out already who have said that the number of weeks per year that they work or the number of hours per week that they work is incorrect. So go in, spend a little bit of time, make sure that everything is perfect because you want this for your staff. This is something that's really exciting and we want to help them get there. The second part is making sure that your NAOIC accreditation and your Head Start approval documentation has all been uploaded and everything is up to date. For admin access users, you see that by going in, you go to program administration, edit program details, and in the accreditation and governance section, you can see the dates of everything that we have. So if you're currently accredited, it'll have your ID number, it'll have your expiration date. If you're Head Start approved, we should have a grant award letter on file and any other pieces rounding out your term of approval. For teaching staff, we're going to add into the mix. Everyone can be looking at account details. Make sure things are correct. Check your profile. Make sure your name is correct. Make sure your email actually works. Your email is hugely important in this. Look at education and training reports. As I said, that's the place where you're going to see what's already been verified. If you've completed a degree and we don't have that recorded there, take a minute, look in your documents and see if you've uploaded it. I had a couple people yesterday who reached out and they had uploaded transcripts, but the degree was not conferred in the transcript. So there was nothing for us to code to show that they had finished that degree. Take a breath, take a minute, really look at everything that's attached to your account. So again, your education and training report for non-admin access users, you find that under My Tools and Settings. For admin access users, you find that in your reports. You have a rolling report that has everybody who's confirmed at your program. You could do a group, sit down, everybody have your education and training report in front of you, take a look at everything and see if there's anything that's missing. The next thing we want to talk about with readiness is bank accounts. There are no paper checks for this. The money is going directly into the bank account. So if you have any teaching staff who need help to get a bank account, if they've had trouble in the past, they need some help securing, please reach out to Women's Business Development Center. You can see that we've put the phone number and the email address there. We definitely want them reaching out. Some people have asked, why did we go that way? Why did we not just say, do a check and let somebody, go use a check cashing entity. We really want to build really good financial health for everybody. And we know that it's been a struggle for some folks. So we want to make sure that we connect them well. When you go to a check cashing entity, they're going to take a portion of your funds. And then with every payment that you make to somebody, you pay the electric bill, you pay the water bill, right? They're going to take another fee out of that money. We don't want you to lose any money. We want you to get well set up. WBDC is also doing different trainings around business health for staff. So definitely reach out if you feel like that's something that you need as an individual, or if you're an administrator hearing this, let's use our expertise in this field. Contact Women's Business Development Council. All right, stabilization funding. So for the administrators on the webinar, remember that you can also use that portion of stabilization funding to help support your staff. So one of the options that we promoted early on with stabilization funding was looking at different pieces around retirement plans and bank accounts. And it wasn't just straight up wages. Be creative with that. If you need help kind of thinking that through, you can also contact WBDC. So what does it look like when you apply? We're going to walk through some screens so you can see just how simple it is, how everything loads. On this screen, this is a two-part because it's a longer page. There's a lot of information that we want people to take a look at, hence all those red check marks. But you'll see the arrow on the left side, apply for incentive. Everyone now has this tab on their left navigation. And you go there, the first thing you'll see is verification of that personal information. Take time. It is really important to take the time to make sure your name is right, your date of birth is correct, the email address is actually active, right? It needs to be active because that's where you're going to get the link eventually to be able to follow how you get your money. Your mailing address, again, this is taxable money, so you're going to get a tax form. You need to make sure that the right mailing address is on file. Phone numbers, if anything comes up and we need to get a hold of you, we're having a problem with your bank account not working, there was something that kicked back, we need to find you quickly. Right? You don't want us spending a long time trying to find you to help you. The second part is your work information verification. If you were to hover over that highlighted early childhood education, and again, this is highlighted just on my screenshot, you won't see that yellow when you're actually on the page. When you hover over that, it reminds you that this opportunity is specific to those benchmarks we noted. The current CDA credential issued by the Council for Professional Recognition, the associate's degree in early childhood or the ECTC A level, bachelor's or higher in early childhood education, or the B level ECTC, or the bachelor's and the accepted early childhood teacher certification. Underneath that, right, you can see that we've got the number of hours worked per week and weeks per year, and the age group with which the person works. All of those are pulled, those last three are directly from the staff confirmation page. So that's where I said, take a moment, admin access users, look at your staff confirmation page and make sure that all of those hours are correct. All right, I'll also make sure that I do this shout out. I would be remiss in my job if I didn't. Do not create fraud. Right, we are tracking, we took a data snapshot beforehand. We're going to watch as data changes. We have to be very careful with money. So we're making sure that if there are any really significant changes, we want to make sure we try to flag those. Don't try to be a friend to somebody to get them more money and then get caught in a bad place, right? Make sure it is up to date, accurate, truthful. The second part of the page is a little bit of the reminder and then the initial confirmations. So things that I've already noted, take a look in your education and training report, take a look in your files. Right, so if there's anything that seems off, go back, take a look to see what we have. And then you're confirming that the name is your legal name, your date of birth is correct, your mailing address is correct. The next question, will I work directly with infants and or toddlers on a daily scheduled basis? Yes or no? And this is our way of identifying for the bonus and our ability to do follow-up to make sure that the person really does work directly with infants and or toddlers on a daily scheduled basis. So again, we want to make sure this is not somebody who is in the office and then helps where needed, rotating randomly on a daily basis. All right, right now we're looking very specifically in this round for this pilot at folks who are regularly scheduled in with the children. If you work for multiple programs, we're going to make sure that we flag you all so that we make sure we have the right amount, because you probably work part-time in one and part-time in another. Collectively, those need to be one application for the full-time amount, if that's what the addition indicates. And then we say, if you disagree, don't submit, right? We don't want you to move forward. Check everything. Then you agree and you click continue. The system then summarizes everything that we have for you related to this application. In this example, the person has a bachelor's degree in human development and family relations. That's what's on file. That's what you would see on your education and training report. They have met the Care for Kids one-time orientation. We see the hours and weeks from the staff confirmation page. So that gives us our base amount of $2,000, and then we start looking at the bonuses. So this person did not work directly with infants and toddlers, so they don't get that. The program is NAIC accredited or Head Start approved, so there is that. And there is no Social Vulnerability Index award for this particular program. So the total amount this person would be eligible for is $2,200. We remind you again, if you disagree, stop, go back, don't submit the application. And then if you do agree with everything, you're certifying that everything is true and accurate. You are attesting to the fact that all of your earned college credits and degrees are on file in the registry. And if you work for multiple programs, you're going to get a hold of your county lead education advisor for the registry before you submit an application. And again, that's to make sure that we connect all of the jobs together to make sure that we are putting in for the correct amount for you. We don't want to get in an application and process it, finding out later that you would have been eligible for the full-time amount, full-time full year amount, but only the one job was eligible for the less than full-time full year. The next screen that the staffer will see is some reporting information, the first name, last name, social security number or ITIN, the address, date of birth. You can see there is a trend. We keep asking you, is this right? Is this right? Right? You attest to a couple different pieces about the tax reporting, and then authorizing Child Care Education Institute, our vendor, and their provider Check Issuing Incorporated to work on our behalf to be able to process the money. And then you start watching your email, right? Again, making sure that email address that you use for login is accurate and that you're looking at it, that you're checking your spam folder if need be, because all the correspondence goes to that email address. The first one that someone will get is similar to this, that says that the application's been accepted for review. And I should say, one screenshot that I missed was what happens when you're not. When you go to click submit, the system will tell you if you're not eligible. And it doesn't count as an application because you haven't been able to actually put it in for review, but it's going to show the denial reasons. So it may say, we don't have education on file for you, or your role doesn't meet. Your staff confirmation page hasn't been updated in the last 60 days. There are many reasons that will show up there. Those are all really important to pay attention to. So teaching staff, if you get that, you can go back, look at your account. You might go to your director or supervisor and say, which of these can you help me with? Which of these are for me to do? Right? Administrators, again, paying attention to those details. So when you submit, you actually get this as your first email. The second one will be your approval. Right? We'll give you some very important information in here. See that section for security purposes, and we give you 4 bullets. This is a big new world. There's money moving, and we want to make sure everybody feels as comfortable and secure as possible. So we tell you who the email is coming from. We tell you the subject line. We want you to remember how much your payment will be. You'll see that displayed in the email. And we want you to remember that you're using your birth date. You will be asked to use that to be able to accept your payment. And then the next emails are actually coming from the money, the payment vendors. All right, so we want to make sure you know that too. Everybody should be super cautious. You know how it is. You know, we tell our children, I tell my mother, don't click on anything you don't know what it's about. This is what you're looking for. This is the screen that you should see specific to you. And we give you all the screens. We just want to make sure that we are abundantly cautious with this, that you're knowing after each one. This is what you see after you click here for your payment. You're going to use your birthday for your password. And this link is a one-time use, right? So that once you use it, no one else is going in and using it to be able to then get more money or take your money. A very secure use of that. After everything goes through, the final screen says your payment is processing. You should receive it within 3 to 4 days. Gives you a sense of the time frame. Okay, these are not going to be overnight because money is moving. We have constant quality assurance checks on this every step of the way. So you know that registry staff are doing volumes of other work, and you know that I've said that we are not in a rush to be able to do all this. We're being very, very careful, but we want folks to remember that, you know, this is going to be in the 10-day or so range to make sure that things are processed. So get on to the fun stuff. What can you do with the funds? They're yours. You don't tell anybody else how you spend your paycheck. This is the same. You don't have to report how you spend this to OEC. Okay, these are not stabilization funds. I know, again, you know, this is a confusing time because of the pandemic. We're still doing a lot of stabilization work, but these are not stabilization funds. So you are not reporting to us how you spend it. They are taxable. Again, that reminder. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that. And if you need to, you put away some money to cover taxes. But a really important question, you know, we've talked about this many times with those stabilization funds, but can teaching staff receive stabilization funds and qualified workforce incentive? Absolutely, right? Stabilization funds were around exactly that, stabilizing. We listened repeatedly to all of you saying, we've worked so hard. The teaching staff have been coming in, they've been dealing with so much. You know, we want that stabilization funding, that portion that was specific to staff compensation and benefits. We want you to recognize the 2 different uses here, stabilization funding versus incentives. So by all means, use them creatively, right? But don't think that you can't use one with the other. And finally, just a few of our what ifs. There are many more in the FAQs, so make sure that you take a little walk through those when you have a few minutes. What if I've not finished my degree? obviously we want you to finish the degree. We're looking at this as a long-term opportunity to incentivize in the field. So we want you to apply for scholarship in the meantime, right? Use the scholarship as much as you possibly can. If you have questions about it, go on the registry homepage, go to the scholarship section. You'll see that we are processing right now for this year. We're going to close March 1 and then reopen in May for the summer. So you can have time to get your documents in, get on board. What if you haven't done Care for Kids one-time health and safety orientation? No worries, do it. Take the time. Remember that there are those two different options. You know, for so many folks, some of you already have first aid CPR med admin, just need to do that 5-hour training available through your registry account. Take the time and get it done. If you work in 2 programs, you heard me say, before you apply, you're contacting your county's lead education advisor for the registry. We want to make sure that we get you the right amount. And then what if you're both an administrator and a regularly scheduled teaching staff member in a specific classroom? You're going to hold tight. As I said, this is the pilot. This is our starting point. We have big ideas of what we want to do and where we want to go and for how long. And so we're moving through this as our very important first step. So stay tuned for those things. All right, on that note, I'm going to end and I'm going to ask OEC staff on the line if there are other questions that need to get answered during this time.
All right.
Give us a minute. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so let's see. Some questions are similar, so I'm going to kind of lump things together. There's a couple specific questions about some people are having some issues with whether it be staff or on the admin side with the registry. So can you please just reiterate who they should contact if there's inaccurate or they're having issues with password, etc. with the registry?
Okay, sure thing. So let me take things in a couple of steps there. If you are having a problem with your password, a few helpful tips there. If you are confirmed employment and you're not sure if you really remember the email address that you used, I know I'm getting to passwords, so just hold tight. Go to your supervisor and ask who has admin access, who's doing the staff confirmation page in your program. Because when they go to the staff confirmation page, there is a click to go into the profile of each confirmed staff member. On that profile, they can see the email address that you use to log into your account. They can't see a password because that's protected, but they can see the email address. And the very first thing that we always do with folks is to confirm that you're using the correct email address. It is amazing how many people change their email addresses and they're like, but I'm sure I use this and I've tried it 50 times and the system has locked me out. Turns out they're using the wrong email address. So the first thing I would do is that. If you know for certain that your email address is correct, use the forgot your password function, which is located underneath the login section of the OEC registry. When you click on that, it'll ask you for the email address. It'll send an email to that address. It will contain a link that you'll use to reset your password. The link will expire. That's okay. If something happens and you don't get to it right away, go back when you can and trigger a new forgot your password email. And then, as I said, you'll reset your password. And if you haven't been in your account for a while, it's going to ask you to update everything. Remember that social security number is a required field now. Date of birth is required. There are updates to the demographic data within registry. So take a minute to make sure everything is up to date. If you don't know who your admin access user is, go to the director of the program or the supervisor and ask about that. So if it's that you're seeing the wrong number of weeks per year or hours per week and you've tried to correct it on your profile page and it's not getting confirmed by your director, whoever has admin access, just check. All right, Rachel, what's the next one?
Okay. While we're in talking about kind of the registry stuff, because this has to do with it, there's a few people that are saying So maybe if you could just address in general with the Care for Kids training that they're showing up on the program wide report as have completed the training, but then when they're going to apply for it, it's saying that they haven't completed it. Again, is this something that who should they reach out to, or is it something that they need to just wait a week and check again?
Yeah, I think all those were corrected. We had a couple programs that had some stuck data that we identified on Friday, and everybody had been cleared out. So I notified there was one program that notified us of that, and that was addressed and corrected. If there's anything subsequent to that, you can email us, CT Charts Registry at ct.gov. If you go on the registry homepage and look under Contact Us, it is that email address that we're asking you to send questions to.
Okay, thank you. Can you just go over one more time, what kind of license does the program that they work for need to have in order to be included in this first pilot?
Sure thing. We are looking specifically at licensed centers and group homes, so DCCC and DCGHs.
Okay.
That was fast.
Yep. Yep. Again, so you did mention this at the end, but just to clarify, if there's an admin, whether it be the director or another admin who also serves as a teacher in a classroom, is there requirements of how much time they must spend in the classroom to qualify for this? And how do they go about then applying?
Yep, so we will have more information coming out about that. It will not be in the next couple of weeks. As I said, we're being very planful with this. We want to make sure that we get this first round of the pilot well underway and have things pushed along. But you can expect that we will have more information coming out about that with all of the details described. And I do want to add, Rachel, I think it's a really important thing just to say, to validate for people that we know that there are folks and roles that aren't represented here. And it doesn't mean that, and I know this is hard to hear when you're not seeing that you're eligible for the money, but it doesn't mean that you are not valued. I know that people are feeling that way, and I keep saying this is the first round, this is the pilot, we've got to start somewhere, and this is hugely exciting. So for those of you who have been able to say, oh my gosh, I never thought I would see this happen, right? Here we are, we have started, and we need to get successes under our belt and move things along so that we can address a much wider scope. So I know that it's hard. We do hear that. We know that there are things that are not reflected here. Some of it is, by virtue of parameters of the funding. Some of it is we're looking at national standards, but we are taking everything to account, and we do want to address bigger and broader things down the road. So please hear me when I say you are still valued. We still obviously need you. We are trying to do as much as we can between stabilization funding and now incentives and every other thing that we try to push out. You will keep seeing us having very similar details as we go along, incentivizing more for infant and toddler care, right? We know that we have huge problems there, but we are a field that is made up of a lot of deficits. So please stay with us. Please don't get super discouraged. This is a great beginning.
And actually, while you have it on this slide too, Margaret, to just, we have some questions about early Head Start being able to qualify. So just which state funded programs are currently included in this opening pilot?
So that the admin access users on the call can look at their edit program details to see that their program has been tagged with the funding. And I can dig into that a little bit more, Rachel, and we can get some information back to folks if they need it. But under the funding in the registry, you'll see that grant program managers have gone in and tagged the program. So if your program receives school readiness, it's tagged, CDC is tagged, State Head Start is tagged.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more? So this is again a two-parter. So about the fact that this isn't like you have to apply tomorrow or you lose it. So for example, if you have a staff member who just started this month, will they still be able to apply once they hit their 6 months? And to kind of go along with that, to address if you have a staff member who is currently going for, say they have their associates right now, but in September, they'll have their bachelor's degree. So talking about when somebody should apply based on their current credentials, and then also how long will this be open for?
Okay, great set of questions. If you are under the 6-month period, you will be eligible when you hit your 6 months. Our expectation is that this is going to be a long-term initiative so that it is not going away. I know I said we have 2.15 million right now. We know that there will be more money that has to go into this. Our PDG plan actually looks at this year over year. And Commissioner Bai is committed to ensuring that this has long-term legs. So stay at your program, right? That's a good piece about consistency. We want that consistency for children, families, and staff. That's why we're also saying it has to be 6 months. We don't want people to hop in. We've learned lessons from other states that have tried to do some of these things where people have come in, taken a signing bonus, taken an incentive, and left with your money. That is not our intention. So we definitely want the 6 months or more. The second part that Rachel asked about, an associate's degree now, working on the bachelor's degree, apply now for what you are eligible for. I would say that if you were about to finish your bachelor's degree in May, let's say, because we're kind of coming on the traditional line of colleges, I would probably wait till I finish my bachelor's degree, because you know that we're in the pilot round and we're going to do some reprogramming and tooling of things as we go. But if you're a little ways off, apply now, get the associate's degree award, and then you'll see as we roll out different layers that we're looking at who was awarded for something previously, what does that next award look like versus a brand new award, other opportunities, we hope will come along, will include some longevity payments as well. So we're really looking at a lot of different things. If you have the associates now, I would apply for it now if your bachelor's is still a bit off. Rachel, I think you had a third part in there, but I can't remember what it was.
No, I think you kind of covered it. So just that it's rolling, so it's not like people have to apply tomorrow, and just to guide people as to whether they should apply now or wait till they finish their next level of degree or not.
Very good.
Okay, let's see. Can you maybe just review real quick this is again a kind of a two-parter of the hours. How many hours does somebody have to work to be considered full-time? And then what if there's a situation where you have a staff member who works different hours depending on the week? Would that person then take an average of their hours?
Okay, thanks. I'm writing notes. Okay, so I flipped back to the page that has the description of full-time, right? Full-time, full year, so 30 hours a week or more, and 40 weeks or more a year defines our full-time, full year. If someone works different hours each week, I would say that the average is probably the best place to land. If we were to get audited, we would come back to you and say, how did you come up with that? And so admin access users, you would have, some sort of record keeping system that shows that this person, typically worked about 25 hours a week or something like that. So I think average is a good way to go, and make sure that your record keeping backs it up.
Okay. I have a couple questions here about, there's they're not two parts, but kind of along the same lines of if a staff member has already gone in and applied, but then realize that their information in the registry wasn't actually up to date. So therefore, for example, they are only getting the $1,000 bonus when they really should get the $2,000 bonus. What should they do to correct that?
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. So we want to emphasize again and again that they need to go slowly and ensure that everything is correct. As soon as something is identified, you need to reach out to your county lead education advisor and alert them to the fact that the application is incorrect. You'll see that some of our lag time in applications is making sure that we look at all the details as well. So we don't want to approve the same day as the application comes in, but we're going to ask you all to work really hard on making sure that those details are correct.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the exact degree needed to qualify? So the fact that the ECE, and a few people are wondering if there's anywhere that lists what the related, directly related fields might be. And also in that, maybe talk a little bit about the QSM piece and ECTC. So how those things that then make somebody qualify.
Okay, there's lots of notes. Okay, so the best sources for this, Rachel mentioned a lot of different things here. As far as the common standard for assessing early childhood degrees and credits, it's available on the OEC or on the registry website. I'm going to try to not mess up my screen. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to mess up my screen. So under I believe it's under general information on the left nav before you log in, there are policies listed and you want to look for the common standard. So that's where we talk about what needs to be included in order for it to be counted as early childhood. There's also a common standard for elementary education and before and after school that we use. But for this purpose, you're probably most interested in the early childhood education one. For teacher certification, that short list is included in the QSM general policy. So if you look at GPA01, that has all the QSM detail in it, that also includes the short list of the teacher certifications. That's the fastest one for all the OEC funded programs to put their fingers on because they know where that lives. As far as QSM goes, I sense that probably one of the elephants in the room is, this addresses some staff and does not address all QSMs. There are those individuals who were grandfathered in 2015 who had a non-ECE bachelor's degree and 12 ECE credits. So they do not have the early childhood content. And there was a piece of legislation that allowed us to grandfather those folks in for meeting the QSM requirement at that time. In this first round, those folks who don't have the early childhood content are not covered, right? So I know that has been a contentious point. I know morale is really challenging right now, and this is a really hard time to start an incentive and not have people get excited about it, while it is still very, very exciting. So I will remind everybody, it is a pilot. This is where we are starting. We're starting with the early childhood content. I think I covered everything on your list there, Rachel.
Yeah, well, and just to mention too about maybe the ECTC portion as well.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So in order to have an ECTC A or B level, for those of you who aren't familiar with the early childhood teacher credential, there are two ways to achieve the ECTC. One is the traditional college route, and that is a degree in early childhood that has been through an ECTC review. So it is the actual early childhood degree that has been reviewed and has met the standards for that credential. The second way to get the ECTC is through the individual review route. And that includes a transcript review and portfolio work to ensure that competencies are met in the same way that the degree seeker who goes through the ECTC degree has met the competencies. So those are the two different ways that you can show your competency in the ECE content. Thanks for reminding me of that, Rachel.
Yeah, I guess so. A few people were wondering if they should encourage their staff to apply for the ECTC if they're in that bachelor's degree that doesn't qualify them on their own.
I would definitely not. So I appreciate the creative thinking there. And I will tell you that that is not how you want your staff to spend their time on this. I think you need to ride the pilot and see where we're going. The ECTC it uses resources. It uses your staff resources, you're supporting them, you know, they're gathering transcripts, they're doing a review, then they're having to develop portfolio, and some of those are fairly complex. They're not always very simple and straightforward, even for teachers who have been teaching for a long time and gotten glowing performance reviews. It's a very different thing to document in a portfolio type of setting. So please do not send staff the ECTC route if they have a 2099 expiration date or if they're meeting already. We want to make sure that we're using folks' resources very, very wisely.
And then I want to just add to that too, as a program manager of a state funded program, if it is part of your QSM plan that you have staff going for their ECTC to meet your QSM requirements by the certain deadlines, then please continue to do that. But doing it purposefully for this incentive is not the reason to do that.
Yeah, and I will say that if we have folks who apply who have a 2099 expiration, they will be politely declined at this point because that is not where we're spending the resources either. They already meet the 2099. All right, so I see we're less than a minute. One more question,
Rachel? I was gonna say I got one more that's actually a really good one. So a couple people are wondering about the SVI. Do they need to know that, or is that automatically calculated on like the back end?
Great question. You do not have to worry about that, and it's a good thing because there's all kinds of folks who are working really hard on making sure we have that data and keep it updated. SVI is calculated and updated through our relationship with our UConn data partners. So we auto load it into applications so that you all do not have to worry about it. You will remember that that was used in stabilization funding. So we got some wonkiness out of it. It's got good legs. We're using it again to address equity. It's been a great deal. All right, so I do want to just say that as questions come in, remember for folks to point toward the FAQs, take a look at what's on the website, and then go back to this recording. OEC grant managers will post the recording and the PowerPoint afterward. You have a little time for that to happen, but we'll get posted. Rachel, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I was just going to say Tiffany's on the call and has her hand up, so I don't know if we want to see your Tiffany from the registry. Tiffany, are you there?
All right, well, we are out of time, so I'm going to say if there's something that we need from Tiffany, we will follow up with her.
Can you hear me?
After. Oh, there she is.
It looks like I'm on a little bit of a delay, so I apologize. I just wanted to address, Margaret, very, very briefly, those instances where there may be some delay with changes as staff leave from one program to another. So there are occasions where they have two profiles in the registry with confirmed employment until everything gets all cleaned up. And I just wanted to set out that reminder to only apply from the current accurate account and make sure that if they have left, even if it still says confirmed, that we're only applying from the current employer. Thank you.
So a good reminder, do not make new accounts. Once you have an account in the registry, it stays with you forever. We will help you with that, but don't go and make new ones because then it does take time, as Tiffany said, to deduplicate yourself. And we have to make sure that a lot of things transfer into the kept account. And in general, remember our business policy for processing time is 7 to 10 business days, right? And again, another reason why it's a rolling application. Take the time, breathe, look at all the details, have a staff meeting about it after you look at the staff confirmation page. If you're an admin access user, if you're a teaching staff member on this, take your time to go through, look in your account, take a walk back through your documents. Is everything there that needs to be there? Don't resend. We want you to be really good, because if you resend, we're spending time looking at your duplicate account or your duplicate documents that we could be spending on approving applications for other folks. Do your due diligence, and that helps us to move things along and keep you at a happy pace with our processing time as well. Anything else, Rachel?
No, I think that's it. We have a few questions. I'll share the questions with you and see if we need to add anything to the FAQ.
Perfect. All right, as always, our FAQs get updated, so you can link back there often. We will send out more communication through the grant program managers as things change in the qualified workforce incentives. But thanks for your time, and let's move on to some great, exciting things. Have a good day, everybody.